beating Minecraft without looking at a single mob. Is it possible? One of the worst moments in this game is when you accidentally look at an Enderman and you hear that scary noise begin to play. But what if you had to reset the world just by simply looking at the Enderman? Not looking directly at it, just being anywhere on the screen. Even if just a pixel is showing, that's all it takes for it to be game over. And there is no point in this run where you are safe. But is it possible? Before we try to figure that out, let's quickly go over the rules. You can't have any resource pack that makes the textures invisible, smaller, or bigger. Particles don't count, so it's safe to look at them, but if you feel it does count, you can just disable them in the options. This may be obvious, but you can't have any mods that in any way helps you complete the challenge, including zoom mods. And finally, it doesn't matter how you avoid seeing the mob, even using your inventory is a valid option. And with the rules out of the way, let's get started. When spawning in a world, immediately look down to avoid seeing any mobs. This is the first instance of the run that requires luck, but you can greatly reduce the risk of seeing a mob by lowering your render distance to the minimum, and I recommend you keep it like this the entire run. It will make it much harder to know where you're going, but think of it this way, if you were able to see that far in the first place, the odds of you seeing a creature is very likely. So keeping your render distance at 2 and looking down is your best option. Even though this is the best strat at this point in the run, it's still not perfect. So enabling audio subtitles in the menu and hitboxes using F3 plus B can help you avoid animals in the first place, but it won't prevent you from seeing them. We want to avoid surface exploration as much as possible, so gather a bunch of wood and go straight down and collect stone. Finally, make sure to block yourself off so nothing can get in, and begin gathering resources. Okay, before we enter the nether, there are 2 things we need to get. These things aren't required, but it'll make your life much easier. The first thing is a spyglass. This requires 1 amethyst found in the geode, and 2 copper ingots. But we don't want this to see far away. This allows us to zoom into the floor and greatly reduce the chances of seeing a mob. Again, like I said, this isn't required, it just makes it a lot easier. The last thing would be carved pumpkins. They add some darkness to the screen so it will help a bit, but not as much as a spyglass. You can find pumpkins on the surface or seeds in some underground structures. Now with everything prepared, we head to the nether. This goes without saying, but if you don't get enough gold in the overworld, make sure to collect enough gold for boots in the nether. And once you have that, is there anything new we need to worry about in the nether? Well, not really. It's very similar to the overworld. The only difference is it has a rough terrain and worse mobs. Yeah, we got lots to worry about. And of course getting rods and pearls. But let's start off by getting pearls. You can't really get pearls from enderman farming. This only really works if you place a boat in a warped forest and just hope the enderman happens to run into it. You can't trade with a villager without looking at them, so this isn't possible. Not to mention how hard it would be to get enough wood for trading. So bartering for ender pearls is really the only decent option. Mining gold would be more of a challenge, but at least it's possible. Collect the gold, get the piglins in a hole without seeing them, and trade them through a corner so they can pick up the gold without actually touching it. This will also be good for collecting arrows, string, and obsidian for later. But bartering for pearls is the easy part. The hard part is getting the blaze rods. Unlike bartering, you have to look at the blazes to hit them, and hit them to collect the rods. So how do you collect rods without seeing the blazes? I've tried a lot of weird methods, but I still haven't found a workaround. But then I remembered something. Hitboxes are weird, and they're not always the same size as the mobs themselves. So can I apply this to the blazes? The simple answer is yes. The blaze's hitbox is actually lower than the blaze itself, and since particle effects don't count, there may be a way to hit the blazes without looking at them at all. And with some testing, you can set your FOV to the minimum, and make sure you're crouching on the edge of the farm. And with all of this done, it's possible to get blaze rods without looking at a single blaze. There is nothing out of the ordinary when looking for a stronghold, just search for it like normal. But when you arrive, that's where things get complicated. It's strange. In most of these videos I make, the silverfish spawner ends up being a roadblock, and this is no exception. How do we get past the silverfish spawner without seeing them? Zooming into the ground will work for a bit until they hit you into the lava, and you can't break the spawner before the silverfish spawns, unless you get very lucky. But I thought of an idea. What if you can break the spawner without entering the portal room? And that's exactly what I did. Now with the eyes, a bow, and lots of building blocks in your inventory, let's defeat the dragon. This will be the toughest part of the challenge. You need to shoot the crystals without seeing the dragon, move around without seeing the enderman, and defeat the ender dragon without seeing either of them. And to make things worse, unlike the nether and the overworld, the fog also affects above and underneath you. Beating the dragon is simple enough. You can just place beds from the outside where the breath is and deal damage that way. But this only works if the crystals are destroyed, so breaking the crystals with low render distance isn't viable. But what if you could break the pillars without looking at them? Here's something useful. Apparently the end pillars spawn in the same location every time. The only thing that's luck-based are the cage pillars, so shoot a few arrows to make sure the crystal gets hit. And now, let's finish breaking the crystals. After using water to trap the dragon in a perch, we achieve victory. And in one quick jump down, we leave the end. Is it possible to beat Minecraft without looking at a single mob? Yes,